Open your eyes.
Psilocybin, LSD.
It's just tea. With a little honey.
Yeah. Mary, I've been thinking. Can we move the Japanese ambassador to 4 o'clock tomorrow?
Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Then bring it down hard. Someday.
What are you doing?
Dance off, bro.
Welcome, one and all, to Fultonland Live on this fine Thursday.
It's just tea.
With a little honey.
It's tea.
Oh, hope you guys.
That's brilliant. I have danced like that before. I have.
I believe it. Welcome, one and all, to the show. We're happy you can join us today. Darren Wagoner is first today. Good on you, Darren. Always happy to see D-Wag. Chris Fisk is here. Good to see you as well. Our friend Woodrow is able to make it. Great to see Woody again. He says, Captain Crack Planet, he's our hero. Smoke your stashes down to 0. Hip, hip, hooray. Baliandor, good to see you. Welcome. D-Wag says, watching on the TV. Love the chat. Bow. Love you right back, D-Wag. Thanks for joining. Statistical Zero, good to see you, Stato. So, our topic this week is a follow-on from last week. We were talking about how propaganda is basically storytelling, and whether we're reading comics or making comics, we're all about that storytelling around here. And I was thinking how lately with the so many of us have seen what we think is essentially socio-political propaganda in comics for a number of years now. And we have said that it sure seems like people, whether it's writers or artists or editors, mainstream comic publishers, independent comic publishers, it seems like there's this, I don't know, some people say it's a coordinated effort. Others say, well, it's not really coordinated that they're doing all of this, but it's more like a bunch of lemmings running off a cliff. They see one lemming who thought it was a great idea, and then pretty soon 2 more follow, and then before you know it, you got 200, running off the cliff saying, "Oh, social justice warriors are what it's all about! Woohoo!" So
you see the little faces, woohoo! All of them jumping off.
I could just see them throwing up their hands, going woohoo as they dive off the cliff, and then they realize there's nothing down there but solid ground. Which we've seen, in my opinion. I'm curious to see what people in the chat think about it, but it seems to me like the last couple of years, with books getting canceled left and right, layoffs, multiple rounds of layoffs at DC particularly, although I can let you know, if you haven't heard already, that the same sort of thing is going on at Marvel. It's a better kept secret, let's say, as to who's getting let go and when. They tend not to announce rounds of layoffs unless it's absolutely impossible to sit on. And it's usually people finish up their work on a particular title or a particular contract, and then they just don't hear from anybody at the company again. That's in a hiring position, I should say. So it seems to me like the last few years, with problems with sales, problems with marketing, problems with you name it, in the publishing business, It seems to me like a bunch of um, people, creators particularly, are starting to realize, maybe this approach that they were taking wasn't the best one in terms of their career prospects and keeping people interested in reading their books. Statistical Zero says what this kind of thing is parasitic. These ideas will kill the host, and when it does, they just declare that the public is bored with the property and move on to whatever is popular at the second. Yeah, I mean, it's basically justifying what they do, rationalizing it, and um, casting the blame somewhere else, avoiding responsibility for their actions. When you take something like, Marvel's most recent incarnation of Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. I never thought it was a great character. A lot of other people never thought it was a great character. But if you look at the sales figures, there were enough people there who were at least interested in the initial run. I can't remember how many issues it was.
I actually heard the initial run was quite good, but several people that I've
Yeah,
spoken to have said, no, it wasn't bad. It was a reasonable title.
and basically, the Marvel really thought that they had to do something with the Marvel name in terms of a flagship character. Um, there's always, whenever you get into this stuff with character names and book names, and it seems like they make a big push for something when it doesn't really make sense to readership, or at least most of the readers. A lot of times there are legal questions that are trying to be answered behind the scenes. And with Marvel, there was apparently a big push at DC to try to reassert control of the Captain Marvel name, even though they tried that in court and lost in the past. And I don't know exactly how much that they were trying to go with this. Maybe it was just one particular editor. I don't know. But essentially, Marvel got enough rumblings about this that they decided, they could kill two birds with one stone. They could essentially reassert their legal rights to the name Captain Marvel that they already held according to the law. But they could strengthen their position, I guess I should say. But then they could also take a little used character in Carol Danvers and kind of push her to the head of the class and try to champion her as, back in 2012 through 2014 as essentially becoming the new face of Marvel Comics. And unfortunately for them, they didn't get the reaction from readers that they were hoping for. And there was a whole lot of, okay, whatever.
Mm.
I'll take Spider-Man, thank you very much. I'll take Captain America. I'll take the Avengers. I'll take the Hulk. So what we have was this essentially propaganda campaign of trying to portray Captain Marvel as the face of Marvel Comics, and not a lot of people buying into that. And we then saw a real tearing down of iconic characters, turning Captain America into a Nazi, basically killing off Bruce Banner and the tortured soul who didn't want to be the Hulk, and replacing him with a teenage kid who absolutely loved being the totally radical Hulk, or whatever they were calling him back then.
Which completely ruins the whole pathos of the character.
Yeah, and so on and so forth. And for a while, I was holding out hope that DC was actually going to surge ahead as the number one comic publisher in the wake of Marvel going woke. But then, unfortunately, DC decided to try to race Marvel to the bottom of the toilet and, engage in the same thing. And we've seen Superman getting torn down just a little bit at a time in the past, just chipping away at the edges. When DC lost or failed to renew the trademark to the phrase "truth, justice, and the American way," they basically just stopped using it. And then recently, they decided, and apparently there's some legal questions that are tied to this. They decided to go with officially establishing a new motto for Superman, son of Kal-El, who is Discount Superman,
Discount Superman.
and say that his motto is, truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, rather than the American way.
I have a theory. Much like Alan Moore, I don't think there are underlying conspiracies. I think the world is far more chaotic than that. There is no doubt that there are powerful people around the world who have their own little cabals, and they make things happen because they want to make them happen because it keeps them in power and keeps them rich and all the rest of it. Fair enough, I understand that, but there's not one big underlying plan because the human race is just too fucking stupid. Oh, sorry, it's just too stupid for that. That's one. I won't get another one. It's just too stupid for that. And far too chaotic. We just can't keep that kind of thing quiet. So much in the same way with this, I don't think it's one thing. I think part of it is the clique. So, for instance, back in the day when the big guys were all about comics, they weren't about anything else. And I've said this before. I think that they were big companies, they were corporates back then, just like they are now. The difference was then their business was making comics. Well, now their business is all kinds of things. It's mugs, it's films, it's paraphernalia, whatever. And in some cases, it's secondary. Even those characters are secondary to the bigger company that owns them.
Yeah.
So your cliques are now different. The cliques that the creators were in back in the day, and there's always been nepotism in the comic book industry, always. I'm not going to cry about it, but I didn't get a job back in 95, 96. Yeah. Mostly because I didn't live in New York, and I couldn't wander into the editorials and like buy them a lunch every other day. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's the only way you get a job at Marvel or DC. I'm not saying that, but it helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When you're in the clique, because there's plenty of British people that have gone over there, it just didn't work for me. But a lot of the time, you're in a clique, and the clique then was a creative clique. Yeah, it was part of the editorial writers. Artists and what have you. That was the clique. Okay, but the clique is now corporate. Yeah. And we know how close corporate is to political. Right. And so your clique has changed to the point where the people that are at least writing or at least dictating what's in the books, okay, have now got completely different viewpoints, completely different opinions about comics, about the things that are in comics, about the people that should be allowed to create comics, the people that and what people write, and how the brands or the IPs work. And it's that clique. Those cliques have changed. They're poles apart because that clique up at the corporate socio-political end has completely different requirements and completely different end goals. They're about societal structure, they're about big money, all these things go hand in hand, whereas down at the other end it was just about making fun comics, and that's what we're missing.
and for a few years there, most of us that are really concerned about this stuff, we were focused on the fact that it was the in-canon stories of these characters. It was their historical legacies, their personalities that had been, they change a little bit now and then over time, but more or less the core of the character is intact for decades, right? Yeah. And so we were really concerned because suddenly they were either drastically different. In the case of someone like Hawkeye, Clint Barton was a tough guy, very macho for decades. I mean, no superpowers, but was able to hang with the superpowered heroes and villains, and could either work, in a team like the Avengers, or he could go solo and get business taken care of. And then suddenly, 5-6 years ago, he's this, silly, mincing, ridiculously flamboyant clown.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's because you're not getting, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, go ahead. But that's because the clique that the people that write that came from they're not like the people that used to write it, and it's not about politics. Okay, I'm sure back in the day, people who were writing comics, there were plenty of left-leaning people.
Yeah,
writing comics,
absolutely.
You know, loads and loads of us.
The majority.
I say of us because I'm probably a little bit left-leaning. All right, but the point being is that there wasn't any idea. You could put the occasional political thing in and let the reader take what they want from it, but there was no sort of, you didn't put yourself in there, or you didn't put the group, the group of people that your clique. You didn't put your clique in there. Okay, you just put, it was like normal people with amazing environments, amazing powers, or amazing scenarios, and that was what stood. That's what made comics fun. And now there's a lot of this self-implant, and instead of just writing the character, and it doesn't matter what the immutable aspects of that character are, color, sexual orientation, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. Don't put yourself in it. Be what actors used to be. Write them, write their character, be their character, not you, them be you, and I think that's a lot of what's going on. And it's because you're not sort of getting the same kind of grassroots creators. I'm sure a lot of them would think they are. And maybe a lot of them are still. I'm not tarring everybody with the same brush, which is exactly what I was saying with my opening statement, is that I think this is a lot of different things put together, but it's resulting in current icons being stripped away, almost being retrofitted. I mean, like, it's, you can call him knockoff Superman or whatever. I would prefer it if there was. It's like I was saying about Marvel, about the 616. Why don't you make a 616 line where you continue the bizarre, the bizarre sort of what's the word? Spandex. That's it. The bizarre spandex and capes universe that everybody loved for 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And do the other universe as well. Do all of them, because you'll expand your audience.
That leads into where I was going with this, which is, for the last several years, we were really concerned about these characters and their legacies, and titles, like Uncanny X-Men or Justice League of America, titles where their legacies are just being at best tainted and at worst destroyed, depending on, who you talk to and what their relationship is to the character or the title. That is one thing, and it's bad enough. But then the next step, and this is where I'm going to show some examples, is how it's not enough, quote unquote, to put the radical leftist / social justice wacko / whatever other catchphrase or buzzwords that they're using these days to describe what they're doing or how they identify themselves, as opposed to just simply storytellers. Now it's about rewriting history, and it's trying to convince people out in the general public that the most iconic superheroes like Superman or Captain America, for example, not only have their characters been completely changed, their personalities completely changed to the point where virtually unrecognizable to a lot of us. When Discount Superman is on the cover of, Superman, and then the little subtitle, The Son of Kal-El. So we know it's Discount Superman, not the real Superman, right? And he's on the cover of this comic holding up a sign that says something like climate justice. And his pink-haired boyfriend is there with a sign. And then they've got a half dozen other people with signs. Oh, okay. So now Superman is all about, protesting for climate justice.
Yeah.
While there's this giant sea monster in the background crushing ships and killing who knows how many people. But good old Discount Superman is there waving a sign because that's what's heroic, right?
What would have happened? Yeah. What would have happened in the Bronze Age? Okay, you're exactly right there. What I can see what you're saying. What they're doing is they're inserting themselves in. I hold a sign up, so I must be a superhero. I must be heroic. Okay. And it's like back in the Bronze Age, if you'd have had that cover, there would have been a whole bunch of students going, we need to save the planet. This is like green things, blah, blah, blah. And there would have been the squid thing going to attack them, and Superman would have been in the air protecting them.
Yes.
That's the difference, okay?
Yes.
That would be heroic. Not you in there. Write the character, not you as the character. Okay?
And so if you can change people's perception of what heroism is, if you can change people's perception of what human virtues are, if you can change people's perception of what a hero is supposed to do in a situation where a hero is needed, well, now you're starting to change people's perception of outside of what's actually in the title, but you can get out into public through the media and basically start talking about how, heroism is, protesting climate this, or it's holding up a sign.
But again, it's the way that it's written. Okay, do you know what? It is heroic to protest. It is right to stand up.
I would say it can be.
It can be heroic to protest. It's right to stand up for what you believe in. Okay, it's right for you to protest against something if you think that it's wrong. And it's hard. It's hard for you to stand out from the crowd and say no, that's wrong. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, but and this is the big part. There's things that are far more physically heroic, like that are immediate. Okay, running out in front of a bus to save a child is incredibly heroic because you're not just laying down your opinions or your beliefs, you're laying down your life. Okay, and all right, we know that Superman wouldn't matter because he'd just get hit with a bus and the bus would just crash into pieces. Okay, that's not the point. The point is that it's a physicality. There's a physicality to saving someone. There's a physicality to a lot of superheroes. Okay, and that's part of the magic of the superhero. It's not something that all of us can do.
Right.
We can't all do that. We can, if we choose to, stand up and say, no, I disagree with that. And that can be a heroic thing to do.
Yeah.
But we're talking about comics. We're talking about entertainment. We're talking about things that are there to inspire. And so to see Superman, okay, I'm not a big Superman fan personally. I never have been. But to see an iconic character like Superman lay down his life in a cosmic way outside of the Earth to beat off something that no humans could defend themselves from, or to subject himself to the rules of humanity, even though he could just like wash them away anytime he liked. That's a heroic thing. It's a heroic thing, but it's outside of the bounds of reality. So it's entertaining and it's inspiring. And if you bring everything down to street level, if everybody's special, no one's special. Okay. Yeah. And if you bring it all the way down to this point where, well, just doing the thing of picking up the placard is, well, that's super heroic. Well, then first off, you're starting to bore the pants off you. Of your readership, because it's like, that's not why I'm reading a comic. Okay, I could read a novel about somebody or even an autobiography about someone who is there to protest against, creeping corporatism or whatever it might be, or against the anti-green agenda, as Exxon, whoever it might be, whatever those things are. There's all kinds of places you can get that. You don't have to get it in a superhero comic,
right?
And if they would, I think if these larger publishers were really brave enough, like I said at the start, you can have your 616 universe, you can have your romance, you can have My Little Pony, and you can have Slice of Life, and you can have a story about protesters. You can even mix it in, and they've done this before in ways, like I said, if this was in the Bronze Age, Superman would be up making sure that the protesters were safe from the big monster. Okay, yep. But you can even bring it into a much like they did with Gotham. Okay, now I never understood that. Why would you make a Batman show without Batman in? Yeah. But quite apart from that, you could make a comic about this set of kids that are like really, they're into the whole green thing and they want to protest. They want to find the way to do it. They might get themselves into some scrapes, and occasionally they bump into one of the superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can link it in, and you can still make it a heroic, good thing for these people to do whatever they might be doing, without bringing the character down to a very basic sort of human average level. Average, that was the word I was looking for. You don't want them to be average. You want them to be super. So,
well, it's to the point now where they've been at it long enough that it's getting into the public zeitgeist, the public awareness. So I just, as a little experiment, I typed the word Superman into the search bar of a browser here just to see what would come up, wondering how far this stuff has gone, how much has it gotten into the public consciousness. So the very first entry, like usual, is a Wikipedia one. Here, I would say over on the right, we've got an image of a Superman that we would probably recognize and think, oh yeah, that's Superman.
Yeah.
Then immediately below that, we've got these little news clips here. Recent news with, here's Discount Superman. How new Superman slogan finally lets him be a man of tomorrow. Then there's the Henry Cavill Superman from the Justice League film. Superman colors quits over new changes made to character's motto, which they changed it to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. Okay. Now, this one from The Guardian, I'm not even sure what this is referring to. I'm not a fan of Colbert or The Guardian, so I haven't clicked on it.
The Guardian are trash.
It says, Colbert says, new Superman motto got people angry.
This is coming
the American way.
Yeah, well, I mean, what he means there is, America's angry. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, like I was saying earlier, I don't think there's an underlying sort of plan. There's no sort of desperate conspiracy. But that, you know, suggesting that, you know, in that first news panel, the way that they said it, how Superman's slogan finally lets him be a man of tomorrow. Well, does that mean that we have to sort of remove all country aspects? We forget the nationhood whatsoever. I mean, I'm not particularly patriotic, but I do come from the UK. So, you know, if I had to fight for it, I would, as the UK. Yeah. So, you know, it is, I do, and, you know, I get looked after by the tax money that we all put in. It's it's a social contract that I, as the individual, have with the nation that I live in. So, you know, that seems a little bit silly. And it's almost like, oh, well, America's rubbish, but the world is great. Be a citizen of the world, and that's the only way that Superman can possibly be any good. So, as much as I don't see any vast conspiracies here, I do see that as a little bit ideological. You know,
well, it's definitely it is definitely ideological. I would agree, and I would also say that whether there was some conspiracy involved, or whether it was the lemming effect, where, you know. Okay, so Matt Fraction starts writing Hawkeye to talk like Matt Fraction, and Kelly Sue DeConnick writes Carol Danvers to talk like Kelly Sue DeConnick, and then a whole bunch of others are following them, and they're following Bendis, or Joss Whedon, when Joss Whedon was writing Astonishing X-Men and making the X-Men talk like Joss Whedon, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So it could be, you know, just the lemming effect. Like,
I think my view of cliques is probably the lemming effect.
Yeah,
you know, everybody's just doing the same thing, and
now it's propagated out it's gone on long enough. It's propagated out long enough that it's hitting mainstream, you know, news outlets and opinion outlets. It says here, Batman and Superman still occupy a unique place as pop culture's most iconic heroes.
They do.
This is from an American perspective, by the way. CNN on MSN.com. I'm sure people in Japan would say that, you know, manga or anime characters, you know, are more iconic. But anyway, there's that claim, or title, I should say. But then right next to it, Superman will no longer champion the American way. It's sad, but our nation deserves it.
What does that mean? I mean, but you see, that's obviously written from a particular perspective.
USA Today.
That's a very biased perspective, and it's like, what? Why shouldn't you have national heroes? Yeah, sorry, but Pastmaster Dan, you're right. I mean, I used to read The Guardian quite some time ago, and I think it's awful now. Again, it's one of these outlets that is so tribal and so biased that it's difficult to read what they write. It's not all of them, but a lot of the journalism that goes on there is just so hideous. But anyway, it's like you read that and it's definitely from a particular perspective. I'm open and complete transparency here. I had that discussion with Pete a couple of weeks back, and I'd still love to curate these things. I still think there's a possibility to bring them back. I love them deeply. I've had my moment of heartbreak with them, where I thought, well, they're not what I had when I was a kid. But then, neither is Christmas. Sometimes you have to just deal with these things. But I'd love to get a chance to curate any of these characters, and especially all ages. If there's any way that we can get comics back to kids without filling it full of ideology, giving them great fun comics that teach them how to read and how to take in story content, then I'm all for it, no matter who gives me the job. But it must be that way. We've got to get back to some basics. We've got to stop. I mean, it seems to me that comics have got to a point where so many of them seem to be for adults.
Yeah,
and it's the art. We've spoken about this as well. The art form is looked down upon, or has been looked down upon. It's very snobby in the art world as far as comics are concerned, although that's changing slightly at the moment. But still, it's been looked down on for such a long time in America and the UK, not so much in Europe and obviously Japan. And yet it seems to be consumed by people of 20 to 55. And they're looking for a market of people between sort of 18 and 25. And it's like, well, you should be making all ages comics like they used to be, so that you capture everybody. And also a constant variation of the kind of titles that you're creating.
So what you're talking about was started off here in Action Comics, and you had comics that could be enjoyed by kids, teenagers, adults, right? That still shows up in the first block of images. All I did was type Superman into the search bar on my browser. So what we got was a Wikipedia entry, and then these little video clips that we briefly touched on. Then when it comes to images, we've got a couple of classic ones down here, more modern, but still showing kind of the classic representation of Clark Kent changing into Superman.
That's a lovely image.
In terms of his costume, his clothing. We've got another fairly recent image, but still kind of classic representation. Then we've got a couple here. I don't know why we need two. I think one gets the idea across of...
I think they're just from different sources, in all fairness.
Discount Superman kissing this pink-haired kid. And why is Superman, quote-unquote, kissing a minor? In this way. We don't need to go into any detail on YouTube. It's a rhetorical question.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I'm completely ignorant of this. The only thing I would suggest, without getting into trouble for slagging another artist off, is that the chins are a little bit weird to me. But there
you go. Personally, I think this looks like two jellyfish with wigs smashing.
I'm not going to be that rotten.
That's just my opinion.
It's a weird image.
Maybe as a pro editor, I can get away with saying stuff like that.
It's not a weird image because it's two guys kissing. It's just the chins. They're weird. The chins are weird. But
I saw this and I thought, oh, jellyfish and wigs getting it on. Okay. Then we go down. I'm not. I'm trying to remember where this image was from. I can't remember exactly how old it is.
I know, but that's quite cool.
If it's 90s or more modern.
52?
It might be New 52.
Yeah.
If anyone in the chat knows, please educate us on that one. I completely noped out of the New 52.
I mean, I wasn't buying comics at that point.
I had no interest in it. NTM is saying, quote unquote, a better tomorrow is so lame. Like, quote, truth, justice, and the American way sounds cool, but, quote, a better tomorrow sounds like something a cat lady would say. I do not disagree with you, Noah.
It would be like said. Captain America shouting, Avengers, group up. No, stop it.
Eric the Guapo says, the only DC title I enjoy is Icon and Rocket, but DC's book quality is piss poor. Low quality paper, and they have 13 pages of ads in their floppies, 20 pages of story, 13 pages of ads.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, over 1/3 of their book is ads. And they're charging, anywhere from $4.99 to now $5.99 for a standard issue. And then their special editions are like $6.99 to $9.99. Well, something like that.
When you're able to get copies of Only Death Can Save Us, they are 32 pages, and I think there might be one internal ad and a couple of pages of editorial.
And they will be available through Arrow
Comics, yeah. And the rest of it is all story or, like world building content. It's all readable content, and they're $4.99.
So if we look at what Eric just said, okay, DC Comics, number 2 comic publisher, and then we contrast that with what you just said about Arrow Comics, this very small independent publisher publishing Only Death Can Save Us in single issue format after you publish the graphic novel version, right?
Yeah.
Compare and contrast those two. And then let's look at where, if there had been an internet in, let's say, 1985, and I had just typed Superman into the search bar, I don't think we would have gotten such a wide disparity of depictions of Superman that we see here, right?
I agree with that. You wouldn't have, no.
So I think back then we would have seen a whole lot of, golden, silver, and Bronze Age imagery, because that's what it was up to that point. And if we look at it, the character had evolved in look because art styles had changed, right? The character had evolved in what he could do as far as superpowers, because as the decades went on, they kept trying to bring in new things for him to do, right? So I understand that, but I don't think we would have seen such a huge disparity between the way Golden Age Superman was presented and the way he was presented, let's say, on the cover of John Byrne's Man of Steel when they relaunched him in 1986. He was still more or less recognizable. I look at, Golden Age Superman down here in these images, and then I look at discount Superman kissing the pink-haired kid. The only thing that I see that they have in common is maybe hair color and the S badge on their chest.
Well, yeah. I mean, but this
it shows how the culture is now in modern days. It's not just about, building on what was before. When Byrne did his Superman relaunch in 86, they brought some new stuff in, especially as it relates to the planet of Krypton. But they didn't try to completely change the entire tone and look and story and everything else you can think of all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
That's what I see is going on with iconic superheroes like Superman, like Captain America, is that they're trying to change everything, including the audience, right? They're actively, they've been in my opinion, they've been in a progression, this process over the last 6 to 10 years of kind of testing the boundaries to see what can we get away with in terms of changing things to chase a new audience, and then let's see how much of the old audience goes away. And can we
which is
the old
weird
audience
because
while we chase this new one? Or
they've not committed to either.
It's like they go too far
Yeah.
one direction and they see that it's failing, so then they pull back and they kind of get their legacy audience back again, like back on board after a year of mishaps or 2 years of mishaps. But they've stopped and started that so many times, trying to make this cultural shift without really committing to it, that now I wonder if they finally have said, okay, we're just going to go for it. We're going to say, forget the legacy audience, forget the ones that have been buying our stuff for decades. We're just going to go full bore for this new audience, which I don't understand why they think the sales would justify that. But be that as it may, maybe they're just finally going all in and they're saying, we're just going to completely change everything, including our readership, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm going to be devil's advocate here, and when it comes to like the new Superman or the son of Superman, I can see how if they feel like they're wanting to make it more relevant, to a newer audience and to a younger audience, at least they didn't actually change Clark Kent. They created his son. I've heard different people argue about, the son of Superman, the fact they sped up his they made him grow up too quick, and there was lots of, Wes over at Thinking Critical was saying they left money on the table by not being able to create stories with like young, with Superman. He's effectively the new Superboy.
Oh,
I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about it because I haven't read.
Yeah, they could have had, even if they let him age in real time, reflected in the stories, they could have gotten a decade of storytelling
exactly
out of the Superman and Lois as parents raising, their young son, and then you had super sons.
So I think that's why I'm saying I go back to my original point. I think you've got a mix here. I think you've got the top tier that are saying, look, we need to have new things. We need to own them entirely. That without doubt, that must be part of it. We need no arguments. We need no legal arguments on this. These things need to be ours. And so they do these changes, and then you get a portion of the creatives that want their ideology in, and maybe even to the degree where they hate the old characters because of reasons. And then you've got this heady mix where the way it's delivered to the general public or to the potential audiences is a little irritating. It's abrasive because it's not done. What's the word for it? It's not done gradually. It doesn't feel like it's right. It's like it's jarring.
It's not organic storytelling.
It's not organic. That's the word. It's not organic. Okay. And because of that, you don't give those new characters the canon that they maybe deserve.
Right.
And because you're not giving them that canon, the new readers may well be turned off, and the old readers certainly will be. So I'm kind of playing devil's advocate from the other end here, saying, well, maybe they're finding themselves in difficulty because of a set of decisions that are kind of hitting up against each other. There's no doubt in my mind that there is a bit of ideology going on, without a doubt. And there's some writers just seem to be sort of they obviously don't like what's come before, and they're not paying before the stuff that's trod the canon. They're not paying it any respect. But there must be this pressure from up on high to say, we've got to make these things, we've got to make these changes, we've got to do these things. And what they're missing, because this is a personal opinion, because they're not in the business of making comics in the way that they were, they maybe not got their ear to the ground in the way that they used to.
That's absolutely true.
You know, they're kind of throwing away audiences left, right, and centre instead of bringing them in because they need to take time. And then, of course, there's, you know, business as well is so speedy these days that they're just having to throw things at the wall and see if they stick. And I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm simply saying there must be a myriad of reasons for why some of this comes out. And I think sometimes to see it as kind of an attack, maybe a cultural attack, is maybe a little bit overblown.
Well, it's even if
I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I just think there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here, and it's not gelling. You know.
Yeah. Current. Well, I think it's gotten to the point now where, a perfect example. Okay, NTM Comics, Noah, 16 years old. It says Superman should look cool. Holding a sign isn't cool. It's what smelly John Lennon-looking hippies do, not what a dude who can literally catch a bullet does.
No, you're right. Yeah.
And the thing is, so many of the new audience that comic book companies like Marvel and DC are hoping to get off of the backs of the films and TV shows, they're not getting. They're not capturing them. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But here's just one example, okay? I typed in Captain America into the search bar of my browser, and first thing I get, again, Wikipedia entry. Okay, over here, traditional depiction of Golden Age Captain America, drawn by Jack Kirby. Great. Then we're in under recent news, these little clips. Captain America, quote unquote, was to blame for Thanos' snap. He is a quote unquote villain.
What?
That's the director of something called The Marvels, which I don't know, TV show, film. I haven't looked into it yet.
Good Lord.
Why the Marvels director Nia DaCosta blames Captain America for the snap. Okay, presumably this is her depicted here under this caption, Hollywood Reporter, right? So that's the first three, and then hate this, quote unquote. Strong reaction to Disneyland's terrifying new Halloween zombie Captain America. And then Captain Marvel 2 director thinks Thanos' snap is Captain America's fault. Okay, so the Marvels is Captain Marvel 2.
Right. How on earth is it Captain America's fault?
Well, if we weren't running out of time, I would click on that. I'd go into it.
Don't worry.
Basically, I read it and I thought it was ridiculous. It made no sense whatsoever to me.
Isn't this an example of personal responsibility?
Well,
if you ask me, there's only one person that's responsible for Thanos' snap. Thanos.
That's him. Yeah.
End of.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what mistakes other people might make along the way, how emotional they might get. What we're talking about bloody characters in a film, but you know what I mean. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're responsible for what you do, and Thanos is responsible for his actions.
NTM Comics says he's responsible because Cap wouldn't sacrifice Vision. He's responsible for the snap. So, in other words, and now that Noah said that, I do remember. I was reading this last night. Basically, what she was saying is she was claiming that that what would have been heroic is to sacrifice Vision. To me, this is, Monday morning quarterbacking, backseat driving. Hindsight is 2020. Analysis here, where she's saying that he should have known in the moment that if he would just let Vision die, then half the universe's population would be spared, and that would be the heroic thing to do, and blah 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 blah.
Is that no different to Thanos's? If I get rid of half the universe, then the other half will survive.
Exactly.
Makes no sense. I would respectfully disagree with that.
Yeah, and my counterpoint would also be that in the moment, a hero, Captain America, Superman, whoever, in the moment, the hero is trying to save that one person's life.
Yeah.
They're not going to sit there and do a utilitarian philosopher's calculation of, well, let's see, if I save this one person, then I need to try and examine the opportunity cost and see, well, how many other people possibly might die in the world or the universe if I, save this person versus if I let this person die, how many other lives No. In the moment, there's a life that needs to be saved. A hero tries to save that life at the expense of their own well-being. And if need be, at the expense of their own life. But this just shows, this kind of goes to my larger point, Russ, of we're so... Marvel and DC Comics and their parent companies have gotten so far from the legacies of these iconic characters, Superman and Captain America, arguably two of the most iconic, at least as far as, American comic book superheroes are concerned. I would put Spider-Man in there as well, and same problem as Captain America. So we've got examples from the two biggest publishers, right? And they've gone so far from the legacy of the characters that sustained their businesses for 80 years that we're now, when I type in Captain America into an internet search window, what comes up is a Wikipedia entry and then immediately video after video after video of this director of Captain Marvel 2 who is talking about, not about the characters in the comics, just talking about the characters in the movies. Because right now, this is what's making money. This is what's become the it thing. It's not comics on spinner racks. It's not comics at newsagent shelves.
I'm constantly frustrated of, like, if you go to Google and you look up a superhero, okay, you'll get several tabs of films and videos and, merchandise before you even get to a comic book. And even then, sometimes along the tabs along the top, comics don't even occur. There isn't even a comics tab. And you're like, well, I don't know, how did that happen? Again, arguing from the other side, that's what's driving media. That's what's there. That's why it's in the algorithm. It's just doing its thing. But I would prefer to see the first image that I saw of Captain America would be the classic cover with him punching Hitler out. That's the image, isn't it? That or the Steranko image on the motorbike.
Now that I've blown
images,
now that I've blown this up, I can read the print. This was penciled by Jack Kirby, but it's Captain America 109 from January 1969.
Yeah.
As opposed to, the 1941 cover where
there's another image, isn't it? There's another image, that classic one by Kirby where he's jumping out and his legs are on the side and stuff, and he's got the hand out towards you. Those images are the kind of the things I would want to see straight up. But it's not most. Look at it. Apart from the entry on the right hand side there's only a couple of these things that are actually drawn.
All of this stuff, all of the video is about film stuff, and then all the images are either Chris Evans in costume for promo for the film, or it's depictions of him, either digital painted or a photo of him at some press event. Nothing about the actual comic book character.
But how much of this is down to change? How much of this is down to growth? So for instance,
a lot of it is because the films are making so much more money. So it makes sense that there's so much more to be spoken of about them. You could see
potentially a time where Marvel and DC for instance, because they're the two biggest, don't make comics anymore.
I can see that. Yes,
they give out licensing to other people to make comics.
Yes,
and they do graphic novels or something, or specials. They do reprints, but they let somebody else get bogged down with the everyday fandom and all that kind of stuff, and let somebody else deal with this problem, because I think they're splitting themselves up too much, because they're not in the business of making comics anymore, because the characters, simply as name, simply as brand recognition, is the most important thing. You can see that because it doesn't matter how many times they might change Superman or Captain America or whatever. It's always the classic images that they put on people's pants or pajamas or on lunch boxes or whatever, because they're very, very recognizable. They're instantly recognizable. So two things going on.
Yeah. Well, when you get the films to be as big as they are, and the comics don't even bring in a drop in the financial bucket compared to the revenue from the films. And then when you break it down into profit margins, the disparity is even wider. I mean, it's clearly it's all about the films these days. But I wanted to show how here, when we get past the images and we just look at the website entries, so we get an IMDb entry, right? So back to films. Then we get an entry on Marvel's website. Then it's about films, and then still on the first page from MSN, Marvel to introduce the first gay Captain America, except the character is not Captain America.
No,
it's
it's
a hobo who's pretending, who's like made his own hobo version. Not even dollar store version. I mean, this is like rags that he found in a boxcar because he's riding the railroad in that story. So it's just.
But you see, that story, as it says, I have not read that story, okay, and I don't know enough about it. But in its essence, okay, the idea that Captain America might have inspired other people to dress a little bit similarly to him and take up his cause in a local way, and that those people are of all variety of types of people. I actually think at its core is a great story.
That and and of itself is not bad, but
when you very respectful of Captain America.
But when you factor in that the through line that gets Steve Rogers and Bucky, and I think John Walker was in there as well, and Wilson, basically everybody who's worn the quote unquote mantle of Captain America. Apparently Captain America lost his shield or had his shield stolen or something like that. And so they're just road tripping around looking for his shield that apparently keeps rolling ahead of them because they can't quite find it in each issue.
That sounds a bit dodgy.
It's so stupid.
But the core, but you see, that's when that comes down to the writing, how it's been executed. Okay, the core of that is I think that's a good solid core. And it's kind of a way of bringing people together. I applaud it. But the execution, effectively, you lose, and that's the problem with a lot of this. And the execution, you lose the meaning.
Yeah, when you don't have competent people telling the stories, when you don't have competent people in leadership positions, then you get this. From Noah, again, 16 years old. You would think the target demographic, right? You want to get like from ages 12 to 34, I think is supposed to be like the prime demographic. Noah says, I used to be the biggest Cap fan. I no longer care about him at all. They ruined him in the films and in the comics. I don't even care about him enough to go and read old issues anymore. And then he follows that up by saying, that's how much they tainted the character. Oh, and I got into Cap from the movies, by the way.
Wow.
Perfect example of how they put out the films. Noah sees the films, likes the character enough to go look into the comics, reads back issues, loves the character. But now they've so tainted the character, he's no longer interested either in the comics or in the films. So
that is sad.
It's that, in my opinion, goes back to where, if we, to your point, Russ, earlier about trying to steward, you still have hope for these characters and would still try to steward them responsibly if you had the opportunity.
Yeah, I'd give it a go.
And there are a lot of people who are right there with you. However, I think that the only way that we're even going to have a sliver of a chance of that happening is if people like us, and people who are in the chat and people who maybe don't know us, have nothing to do with us, but are of a similar mindset. If we speak out and we speak up and we say this is what the character was and can be again, and you could have incredible sales numbers. They're not going to be exactly like the heyday of the late 80s and early 90s before the industry imploded, but you could have a comparable performance in terms of revenue. It would just come in different forms. You would have to really make good use of technology that we have today and capitalize on it instead of treating it like a necessary evil, the way, Comixology does with the way that they present digital comics, or the Marvel Unlimited app, the way that thing is built. I mean, these things are awful in terms of their execution, just like the Captain America and all of his other Captain Americas looking for Cap's long lost shield rolling down the highways and byways of America. So I think you may be right. There may be a chance to save them if we continue to speak out against that stuff, and to continue to remind them that there are still people who would go back to buying the books again and would go back to seeing the films again if they got off of this politically driven, in my opinion, it is propaganda at this point, where you've got Kevin Feige talking about all of these socio-political reasons why they cast the Eternals movie the way they did. Why they specifically say, oh, and we have a gay character in the Avengers Endgame film. Well, guess what? Turns out it was the director doing a self-insert, little cameo shot, and this was a bit part. I don't know if the character even had a name. It was blink and you miss it type of stuff. But so they shoehorn that in there to be able to say that they did it.
Yeah, and then, it's very disingenuous, isn't it?
And then the response was either people loudly saying that was ridiculous, don't do that. And then you get an equally loud, if not louder, response, maybe smaller people, but they make more noise, saying, you didn't go far enough. Why wasn't he blah, 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 blah? Because, okay, if you're going to cater to that crowd, then you better go all the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, don't bother.
That's what I'm saying. I think they need to be able to dislocate themselves from producing comics and let people bid for those comics. They could make a lot of money out of that. And then you'd be an open market of ideas, which is always the best way to be. And let's see what other smaller publishers can do with those characters. I think that's the way forward. Personally, I know that other characters that haven't come from comics have been using that model for some time.
Yeah,
where they license themselves out to publishers, and publishers create comics about them. And I think probably that's the best way to go. Maybe keeping a core of things, but
yeah.
And I'd really love to see. I mean, this is just my personal, crusade, as it were. I just want to see all ages comics back again. Yeah. I want to stop this segmenting of people. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with adult comics. And when I say adult, I mean adult themes.
Right.
Like horror and like, maybe romance stuff and all the rest of it. I want to see action, fun, educational, as in they're educational in the way that they teach you how to take content in, learn new words, just open your eyes and open your horizons. I want to see all ages comics back. And if you bring all ages comics back and you put them in everywhere and you invest in them and trust in them, people will buy them, and it will be a market again. It will be out there, but you've got to give people the opportunity to do that. And at the moment, it seems that comics, like I was saying earlier, they just seem to be focused on adults only. There are kids comics out there and whatever, but I mean the main, like the big names, they all seem to be they all seem to be focused on, adult themes instead of bringing kids along, and it doesn't matter whether they're gay relationships or heterosexual relationships or trans relationships. I don't necessarily want, like, for instance, when my kids were like between the ages of 5 and 15, I don't necessarily, okay, 15's a bit old, up until about 11. I don't think they need to be reading about that kind of stuff. I want them to be kids for as long as possible. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the genders are or the sexes or anything. I don't care. Okay, I just want them to have fun, and it doesn't mean you can't go anywhere near relationships. Because I was reading Fantastic Four, and Johnny was running after Crystal, and I was only like 8 and 9 years old, and I knew they were in love. And I knew there was a romance going on there, but there was nothing else other than it was part of the story, and that's okay. But I didn't want to get into anything heavy. And it wouldn't have mattered if it was two guys. It wouldn't have mattered. Okay, my mum and dad were pretty open. They were very liberal, so that didn't bother me. I didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. But it was just the fact that it's focused on that kind of thing. Open your minds, open the possibilities for comics, and give lots of different types of comics, and you'll bring more readers in.
That's the thing, is that you've got to bring more readers in for the medium to survive. And so I've got your Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you very much for putting up the link. If we could, when you guys get a chance, if you haven't checked out Only Death Can Save Us 2, the first one was great. I backed it long before I met Russ, long before I, even approached him about drawing the Outliers. And he and I basically have the same philosophy when it comes to what all ages comics are about. It means they're essentially written for adults, but they're safe for kids. So you as an adult can buy it and read it and enjoy it and get stuff out of it, and then hand it to a kid, and they're going to get other things out of it. They're not going to read in everything that you will as an adult, because they don't have the life experience of an adult, but they'll be able to read it, enjoy the art, understand at minimum the surface level of the story. And then, if it gets them thinking about some of the deeper things in life that's age appropriate, well, then great. What it means to be a bully or stand up to a bully, or why would somebody choose to tell the truth, even if it means something, quote unquote, bad might happen. Those are the sorts of things that kids are trying to figure out. And if we have characters that are idealizing human virtues and not idealizing human vices the way so many adult comics do, because as adults we understand this is a fantasy story and we can escape our real, quote unquote, real life, and just enjoy a little fantasy story where somebody like I don't know, the guy from Invincible is punching people into ketchup. We understand what that's like. You give that to a kid and that could give them nightmares.
That's no good. So, no, that's no good.
Both Only Death Can Save Us 1 and 2, and then also the Outliers. When we say they're all ages, really we're talking about if an 8-year-old and a 38-year-old and a 68-year-old and a 98-year-old are all reading the book at the same time, they can all enjoy it. Yep. Some for common reasons, some for unique reasons based on their life experience at that point, but they should all be able to enjoy it.
And this all stems, both of us, from a deep, deep love of the medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever we might talk about or discuss, investigate different ideas and whatever. It all stems from. I have a deep love of this medium. It's something that I'm never going to stop doing.
And this comment here from Eric the Guapo, we're saying these weirdos heavily push sexuality on children. Even in schools, they're teaching kids in elementary school about that stuff. It is borderline grooming, if not full-on grooming. Yeah, it really depends on the school district and the state, or sometimes even county. Sometimes one state like Texas, you'll have schools in Austin, pushing really like the stuff that Eric's describing here, Whereas you go to a far more conservative county in Texas, and you're not going to find that stuff in the elementary school curriculum.
Wow.
So
sexual education has been a hot topic for a long time. When
parents,
my kids were at school,
yeah,
there was pushing of it for when they were quite young, and it all kind of came under the guise of stranger danger. You know, if they understood about relationships and things, they'd be more equipped to say if somebody touched them in the wrong place. And it's like, no, this is all too early. Let children be children. Stop. You know, I mean, the trouble is that kids are commercialized so soon, so quickly when they're so young, and they don't get a chance to be kids anymore. And it's like, you know, you should be playing football in the park till you're 12. And then after 12 or whatever, then you can start finding out about these things, because that's when your body starts to change. Before then, just be kids. You know?
Yeah. And speaking of just being kids, along with your book, Only Death Can Save Us, which I read the first one, enjoyed it thoroughly, looking forward to the second one. And then I wanted to show the other one here. We're talking about the Outliers, which you drew. I'm sure everybody in the chat
had great
knows
fun
that.
drawing that. It was lovely, and those colors looking spanking, very nice.
Yeah, so these are this is a work in progress. I'm testing with a new colorist, and so there's some corrections that have to be made. Like David Santos has black hair, not brown. So I've already given some notes on things that need to be corrected. This blue is a little too close to classic Superman and Captain America. It needs to be more like the navy blue in the American flag. It doesn't have to match exactly. It just needs to be pushed more in that direction. And then here's a little behind the scenes for you guys in the chat. One of the things that we deal with when we're making comics, when Russ and I were first collaborating with the costume design, so I gave Russ a bunch of notes, and then he came up with a concept drawing, and then we would work that concept drawing back and forth until we were both happy with it. And one of the things that initially we thought would work, but we wouldn't find out until later when we started doing color tests that it didn't work so well, is in the tights here around the knee, there's kind of there's a bit of a line work here. It's a vertical stripe going down the sides of the legs, and then works into something of a knee pad shape around the kneecap, and then comes back down to a stripe. And what we were thinking is, because the Saints costume is inspired heavily by luchadors, Mexican professional wrestlers, I gave Russ some reference, and then he looked at some reference on his own. And one of the things that he picked up on was that a lot of them have these knee pad shapes in the tights. So he thought he would work that in with a design note I had asked for, which was a vertical white stripe running down the sides of the legs. And I liked it when I saw it in black and white, and I thought it would work well, especially with the wrestling boots. And then when we went with colors, I had forgotten, okay, the inside of the cape is white. So then this stripe on the side would be white, and then the knee would be white. And it just kind of got lost in the underside of the cape. This is when Ink Spots and I were developing the original coloring style we were going to try to go with. So with this new test colorist, I've asked in the next iteration of this, I've asked for the color change with the blue and the hair. I've asked for a little bit of a darker complexion here, because David Santos is half Cherokee, half Mexican. And then I've asked for this line around the knee to be removed. So anyway, it just to let you guys know that work is progressing. When Ink Spots had to leave the project, it was definitely a setback. But I immediately after I got off the chat with Ink, immediately reached out to another colorist, and we've been in talks, and things look like they're going well. We're going to do some more color testing with some more characters, and then if we're both happy with the results, then we'll see if we can get a deal done and then announce them. But one thing I wanted to show is that the previous coloring style was more painterly. This is much more of what I think will really sell the idea of having the premium graphic novel version, having taken advantage of, the technology that we're using to color the book, do some special effects where appropriate. Like the Saint actually will have a glow around him. When his power is active, he has this energy field that's always active around him. So we'll be able to do stuff like that. There is some subtle gradients here in the colors, which you guys may or may not be able to see depending on the screen that you're viewing this on. But for the most part, it still is reminiscent of the classic Bronze Age style coloring. Whoops, sorry about that. Oliver from 656, here's a colorist himself. He says, I like that coloring style. Is it cuts and grads? Yes, sir, it is. It is a cut and grad style, and we're going to go with that for the premium graphic novel format. And then for the newsprint or newsprint-like single issues that we publish, depending on how paper supply shakes out in the next year or so, that will be colored with flats. There might be some very subtle cut and grad work in that version, but it's designed to look like, kind of the end of Bronze Age coloring, mid 80s, late 80s, for the single issue format when we publish those.
Looking nice.
So yeah, as we kind of touch up the color work, we work out some of the hues and move forward with the next character, I will be showing you guys progress. And we're still on target for a spring launch, which for us in the US is like March, April timeframe. And another update. Actually, Russ, I'm in the cartoon business now.
You were saying, yes, and now, but is this official?
It's official, yeah. So I've been working with Pedro Eng, who you are familiar with. He is the one who is drawing the Black and White 2 supplemental book, High Octane, written by Von Klaus.
Yeah.
And I've known Pedro for a while, and I wanted to get into animation as a way to... two reasons, really. One, for marketing and promotion of the books. I wanted to have stuff out there that people could be interested in or entertained by, that they didn't have to buy in order to read. Okay. And I thought animation would be a fun way to do that for multiple reasons. And then, so marketing and promo is one. But then another reason why I wanted to get into it is some of my long-term plans for Outlier Comics involve providing supplemental content to people in between book releases. So
cool.
Because our books take as long as they do to produce, and depending on Russ's schedule and interest in the future, we may be publishing bigger books than, a 48-page main story and then 1 to 3 8-page backup stories. We may go in, and of course, it's always predicated on how well does the campaign do financially, how many people back it, how much can we afford to do in one book. It always comes back to that. But whether we do a bunch of 48-page main stories where there's 2 chapters per book, and it takes 6 of those to get through the 12-part story arc, or whether we are able to ramp it up and do, let's say the next one, they might be 3 chapters, and then the one after that, maybe 4 chapters. I mean, we don't know. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, the point is, it takes a long time to make these things, so there's a long waiting period between releases. And I have wanted for a long time now to come up with a way to have supplemental content that you don't have to be aware of it in order to enjoy the books. But if you are aware of it, it enhances the reading experience, and you get a lot more immersion, let's say, into the world of the Outliers. And so being a kid who really enjoyed cartoons in the late 70s and basically all throughout the 80s, and even into, I would say, the X-Men cartoon in the 90s was probably the last one that I really enjoyed watching. I wanted to do something that, it basically showed the Outliers in an animation form. Because what I'd love to do is, if there's enough interest in the franchise and the characters in the years ahead, I want to produce animated shorts. And I'm learning the business by doing animated trailers. So I've got a little bit of animation that's basically done, and I have a theme that I commissioned from a composer. I've been working with him for several weeks, and that's now finished as of this week. I just need to get Pedro some graphic design stuff. And then once that's done and he ties it all together, we will have our first little animated trailer. And it'll be something that I can... It features the Saint, and it's basically what in animation they call an ID, I guess, where it's kind of like just a little brief bit of animation that also has some branding attached to it that I can play in front of videos. I can put it on any format, really. And then now that he's got the theme for the full trailer, we're working on storyboards for a teaser. And then we'll also have... So the teaser will be like a 12-second, 15-second trailer, basically. And then the full one will be somewhere in the neighborhood between like 30 seconds and 45 seconds.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get into doing actually scripted animated shorts in the future. We'll just see how it goes. Ashton Jackal is asking if you're streaming with Pete later.
Probably not. No, I don't. No, that came out of the blue. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
There you have it.
Why would I be? What's Pete doing later? I need to go and find that out now.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. We know you could be spending your time elsewhere, and you choose to spend it here. We're grateful for that. And hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope that this day is treating you well. If not, then let's see if we can make it a great day and turn things around to the best of our ability. Really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Great discussion.
Bye.
Žere hlavně pražáky, jmenuje se Jožin. Jožin s Bážin, močálem se blíží. Jožin s Bážin, k vesnici se blíží.
Just do it! Make your dreams come true! Do it! Nothing is impossible! Do it! Make your dreams come true! Yes you can! Yes you can!